Gata for the sun of the mind calm, body at ease, breathing quiet, sentiment benevolent. Dharma friends sitting still in vital silence, wanting nothing, we practice eco-Buddhism The sound of the temple bell booms for all to cease from conflict. May the way of Buddha usher in the dawn of nonviolent global village forever. Here is the after sound of the bell. Thunder of silence, light after Dharma rain. Amoga. Varochana Mahamudra. Mani Padme Jvala Pravartaya.
We stand for the chanting of the three refuges. First in Sino-Korean, which may be new to some of you. Just throw your sound in. There's an experience without having to think about it at all. And then we'll do the English by recitation after. I go for refuge to the Buddha.
I go for refuge to the Buddha.
And resolve with all beings.
And resolve with all beings.
I will cultivate a heart of enlightenment.
I will cultivate a heart of enlightenment.
And realize the great way.
And realize the great way.
I go for refuge to the Dharma.
I go for refuge to the Dharma.
And resolve with all beings.
And resolve with all beings.
I will cultivate a heart of enlightenment.
I will cultivate a heart of enlightenment
and realize the great way.
and realize the great way.
I go for refuge to the Sangha
I go for refuge to the Sangha
and resolve with all beings
and resolve with all beings.
I will seek peace and happiness for the many
I will seek peace and happiness for the many
and transform this world into Buddha land unimpeded.
and transform this world into Buddha land unimpeded.
Okay, please remain standing as we light our third candle. Just here for the third week, I believe. It's our peace candle. Would you please do that, Mom? We found that it seems to just make everything a little clearer. And this morning, we will have a reading of The Way of the Bodhisattva, first by Hayun and then by Magamak. Please come a little closer. What'd you do with the book?
The way of the Bodhisattva. Thus, by the virtue collected through all that I have done, may the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world, until everyone is healed. May a rain of food and drink descend to clear away the pain of thirst and hunger. And during the eon of famine, may I myself change into food and drink. May I become an inexhaustible treasure for those who are poor and destitute. May I turn into all the things they need, and may these be placed close beside them. Whether those who encounter me conceive a faithful or angry thought, may that always become the source for fulfilling all their wishes. May all who say bad things to me or cause me any other harm, and those who mock and insult me, have the fortune to awaken fully. May I be a savior of those without one, a guide for all travelers on the way. May I be a bridge, a boat, and a ship for all who wish to cross the water. May I be an island for those who seek one, and a lamp for those desiring light. May I be a bed for all who wish to rest. May I be a wishing jewel, a magic vase, powerful mantras, and great medicine. May I be a wish-fulfilling tree and a cow of plenty for the world. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, May I always support the life of all the countless creatures. And until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach unto the ends of space. Just as the previous bodhisattvas conceived the spirit of enlightenment, and just as they successively lived in the bodhisattva practices, likewise, for the sake of all that lives, do I conceive the spirit of enlightenment. And likewise shall I too successively follow the practices.
And once again,
The way of the Bodhisattva. Thus, by the virtue collected through all that I have done, may the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all the sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. May a rain of food and drink descend to clear away the pain of thirst and hunger. And during the eon of famine, may I myself change into food and drink. May I become an inexhaustible treasure for those who are poor and destitute. May I turn into all the things they need, and may these be placed close beside them. Whether those who encounter me conceive a faithful or angry thought, may that always become the source for fulfilling all their wishes. May all who say bad things to me or cause me any harm, and those who mock and insult me, have the fortune to awaken fully. May I be a savior of those without one, a guide for all travelers on the way. May I be a bridge, a boat, and a ship for all who wish to cross the water. May I be an island for those who seek one, and a lamp for those desiring light. May I be a bed for all who wish to rest. May I be a wishing jewel, a magic vase, powerful mantras, and great medicine. May I be a wish-fulfilling tree and a cow of plenty for the world. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the countless creatures. And until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach until the ends of space. Just as the previous bodhisattvas conceived the spirit of enlightenment, and just as they successively lived in the bodhisattva practices, likewise, for the sake of all that lives, do I conceive the spirit of enlightenment, and likewise shall I too successively follow the practices.
So together, let us do 3 prostrations in the spirit of being a cow of plenty as we can. It's called shining our light at this time that we face on planet Earth. So slowly, looking up. And if you cannot do the whole one, do what you can wholeheartedly. Please be seated. I'm turning this direction. The full hunter's moon shines these vibrant autumn days. Halloween is near. We're preparing the garden for winter. Dear brothers, dear sisters, dear Dharma family, in the midst of horrific violence in Israel and Gaza, and with great foreboding that there is more to come, I'm trying to understand how to respond appropriately in our Sangha and in relation to suffering half a world away. A letter from a fellow Buddhist teacher in Berkeley that I received that I would like to share with you. In this world, hatred is never appeased by hatred. It's only appeased by loving kindness. This is an ancient law. Dhammapada, verse 5. Watching a nightmare unfold in Israel and Gaza, words are insufficient to express the grief and anger felt there and felt here in our hearts. No words can bring back a life or heal a broken body. Words cannot free a hostage or release 1 million people from the destruction of their homes and forced evacuation. But even if words are insufficient, our silence is also unacceptable. Silence is easily mistaken for inattention. So today, irrespective of terrible things done on both sides of the conflict, let the world say, enough. We are all of one human family. Let us talk among ourselves and ask how we can help, even in small ways. The cow of plenty. In 1957, Martin Luther King Jr. gave a sermon in Montgomery, Alabama, titled Loving Your Enemies, which includes these thoughts. Hate for hate only intensifies the existence of hate and evil in the universe. The strong person is the person who can cut off the chain of hate, the chain of evil, and inject within the very structure of the universe that strong and powerful element of love. The Hamas attacks on Israel's civilians and the Israeli military's bombing and invasion of Gaza can only deepen the decades of intergenerational trauma on both sides. With bitterness and hatred, however understandable, etched upon our hearts and minds, there are no victors. We may not yet see clearly what to do, but we cannot turn away from this suffering. May all beings be safe. May all beings be free. Hosan Ellen Sanook, Berkeley Zen Center, Clear View Project. So what Ellen said was, let us talk among ourselves. Let us talk among ourselves. We have been doing that in this Sangha on Sunday mornings for the last few months, really, various topics. Last week, Young Shil talked with us about his experience with his teacher and meditation. Some of you were here to appreciate that. So, in the spirit of continuing to talk, as I go about my day, wondering what that could look like this week, because it's my turn. And so on Wednesday, coming back for a morning practice after a walk, I spied this guy right here, dropping off some produce. Actually, he was collecting empty boxes that he would use again at his farm to bring produce around Ann Arbor. He's a really good farmer friend of ours, and he used to live at the temple for 6 years in the early years. So he's kind of the pioneering member. And I asked him, how is it for you, this Israeli Gaza thing? And he kind of put the box down for a while and began to share his thoughts. And I was touched. I remembered when he was really young, when he was here, at first he was in his 20s. He used to speak frequently about this high school teacher that he had, a woman, who really inspired him to investigate, to question, to search deeply for the meaning of various things in his life. And he would always appreciate her guidance and his time with her. And even there were other people who came to the temple at that time who also had this teacher. I think she might have steered them this way a little bit too. And as I listened to him talk about where he was with the situation in the Middle East, I saw and understood that he had continued that seeking mind, that curiosity, up into this day and into every aspect of his life on the farm. And I thought I would ask him if he would come and be part of the discussion with us today. How about a farmer in our midst? Actually, we have another one right over here too. So how about two farmers in our midst? Are there any other farmers in our midst? Another one. Good. Yeah. So let's define the question, and then let's begin to hear first from Asvabhava. And that's A-S-V-A, Asva, please say.
Asva.
And then B-H-A-V-A, Bhava.
Bhava.
Asvabhava.
Asva.
And his street name is Richard Andres. Richard. And he's from Tantri Farm near Chelsea. And Asvabhava means no individuality. That's right? Eh?
Self-being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No self-being. So would you come over here,
Yeah.
please, Asvabhava?
Mhm.
And the question, as you put this on.
Yeah.
The question I have for Asvabhava is this, and it will be the question that I'd like to offer to you too. And it means in this world where there's so many things coming at us, we have to be shit detectors. We have to be shit detectors. And there's an old saying brought to us by Thich Nhat Hanh. The thing is, are you sure? It's something for us to really, get strong on something, but are you sure? And so the question is, what does investigation of this situation mean to you? What does investigation of this situation mean to you? What does it look like? Okay, let's hear from Asvabhava first. So please sit down.
Mhm. I had to pick up a monk from the bus station about 30 years ago or something. We're having a conference here at the temple, and he was a lovely man from Thailand, but he had spent 20 years in India being a kind of a street preacher. So he kind of, in India, if you're sincere in your faith, everybody just kind of accepts that you're okay. And that was the sense that I had from him, is that even though he was a Buddhist, he was okay with what everybody else was doing. And his name was Vivekananda Nagasiri. And he was very warm and sweet and friendly and outgoing and energetic. And everybody loved him. But my job this time was to pick him up from Arizona. He had just come from Arizona because he was taking care of a temple there where there were monks that were killed by somebody that decided that they didn't like monks. So he had to go and take care of that temple. And then on his way back here, he was waiting in the bus station. And for some odd reason, there was somebody there that didn't like him because he had this orange robe and, he looked Asian, and there was something about him that they didn't like. And they were hassling him and kind of calling him out and saying, go back home, something like that, And I saw him, and he looked kind of flustered, which is not very typical of his nature because he's very sunny and sweet. And he was like, well, let's get out of here. And I was like, yeah. But I had this impulse at that time to be sort of angry and righteous and feeling like, how could somebody confront this sweet monk, And I wanted to kind of, go after this guy to a bit. I just had that impulse, and I was like, well, let's get out of here. And he was sort of, yeah. So I took him back, and on the way back, we were riding back in the car. And I was like, oh, are you okay? And what was going on there? And he said, for some reason, and it must have been in a past life that I had done something wrong to that person. I listened to that, and I was not satisfied with that answer. I was like, this is just, this person was like being mean, and, they needed to, but, for him, it seemed like he just wanted to let go of the whole situation. And that was the best way to do it, was the self-effacing, like, I'm not going to harbor, for this random sort of like hatred. I'm not going to harbor hatred. And, that was that. And it just kind of left me in a situation where I was like, I am not satisfied with that answer. But it stuck with me, and it made me think that there is a way of, trying to diffuse hatred And, certainly neurologically, if you look at any of Robert Sapolsky's writings, he's going to talk about the neurology of hate and, how it influences human behavior and how it can be manipulated by politicians. And, the seat of hate is kind of, I've forgotten what part of the brain, maybe one of you know, but it's this part of the revulsion, the physiological revulsion, like when you eat toxic food or something, you have this revulsion. And if you watch and you have this sensation of hate and this revulsion, it can occur, when we're watching the news, or, if we're around, somebody that smells differently or looks differently, or we're conditioned culturally to have that trigger. That's sort of the thing to watch and notice, that the hate is, the thing to work on. It's not necessarily the trigger or the person that is in front of us. It's our own internal reaction. And so that's sort of, being here at the temple, I would feel safe in saying, that would be the case here with Israel and Hamas. Of course, so much injustice is occurring, and historically, there's just a whole ocean of injustice. But, if we're committed to resolving the conflict, which, we have several examples. In, South Africa, there was a Truth and Reconciliation. In Rwanda, there was a similar situation, 800,000 people killed. Gross injustice. And, there was resolution, there was truth and reconciliation, and that was that. And we're things have improved. Not that those places are free from troubles, of course, but in this case, a very tricky situation to resolve, especially right at this time of war. Thinking back to some of the teachers that talk about this kind of thing, the genesis of war is years before it ever occurs. 20 years before a war occurs, there's a genesis of that conflict, and that's the time to resolve it with the least amount of trouble. So going back and looking at the history of this and trying to understand, even though there's all this tension and hate and polarization, and arms being shipped and money being dumped in to prop up one side or another, trying to have an even-handed understanding of the situation and its history, without getting consumed by the hate. So important way of trying to work skillfully with this situation. I think specifically in the Middle East, when there's a relationship that's strained, where people can't get along, whether it's on an interpersonal level, or a national level or a community level, there's this idea of a letter of atonement, and that's something specifically we can work on. And atonement is not answering the question of who's right and wrong, but it's how do we get back to relating to each other in a way that's civil. And so if there's a wrong, addressing the wrong and saying, I'm sorry, I'm culpable of this. If there's a perceived wrong, then saying, you have this perception of wrong, and I'm very sorry if there's anything I did to trigger this. And not even going to the point where you're saying, well, there's a, I think your perception is off. It's like, no, I will make this extra step forward to say, I'm very sorry, and I want to work with you, and I want to continue building a relationship of conversation rather than separating and hating each other. And I guess in the case of Vivekananda Nagasiri, that was the stumbling block I had, because I felt like he was wronged, and we could be righteous in our condemnation, but it was the perception of this other individual. He couldn't get over the fact that, Vivekananda was a bad person, even though, in my perception, he was a very kind, sweet person. But Vivekananda was conciliatory and was just like, no, I must have done something, in other words, in a past life. So in that spirit, at this point, that would be the right policy, I think, for us to follow as a nation, is to say, we have things to atone for. There are things here in this country that are contributing to that conflict. And so, writing a letter of national atonement, I would like to see the president reach out to the Palestinians and atone for the wrongs, which are many, actual, and and any perception of wrong as well. And so we could start, some kind of peace process here in a very difficult situation. I'm afraid that's going to be challenging because, we're so geared up for conflict and war, as we're dumping trillions of dollars into the military industrial complex every year. Just, as a matter of course, but, it could be a tangible thing that, as a spiritual community that people do, if not to actually affect change, but to, find peace within themselves for this conflict. So I guess that's, one course of action. And I guess that's what I've learned or that's what I would say at this moment. And reflecting about this issue.
Okay, so is this a good time then to share with them?
Yeah.
Okay, so your investigation, would you like to share?
Okay.
We kind of talk with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Often.
Hello. Thank you for opening up a space to be able to speak to this. I, like many, have been reduced to tears again and again this week. I've called my representatives multiple times a day, every day. And I'd like to preface this by saying that I grew up as a military dependent and painfully aware throughout my childhood of the realities that I was supposed to be shuffled into being in the U.S. military. I broke away from my family of origin because I refused to do that. I'm 35. So I want to make this a reality to people that this is not just a narrative that happens in 1948, 1942, in the 1800s. The U.S. industrial complex, and I'm glad that you called it that, preys upon people who are misinformed and and with lack of funds. I grew up lower income. My parents went into the military because they were lower income. They are still middle lower income. I'm an adjunct professor, first generation college student. I went to an Ivy League institution. I'm in classrooms at conferences. I speak to students who are of many different backgrounds. I also work with a young girl who is Pakistani and Palestinian to give her art lessons every week. It was heartbreaking for me to go and sit with her this week. But she was joyful. And I tell you this because I know in my heart that what's happening in Palestine is a genocide. And I know that if they were Ukraine, they would be receiving more attention. And I'm afraid of the narratives and the myths and the perpetuated hate that I saw growing up continue to perpetuate. I'm tired of narratives that say that this is something that began just instantly or 20 years ago. This started with a Nakba. And I think we need to be familiar with what Nakba means. We have a community, I'm new to Michigan, but Dearborn is right over there. Canton is right over there. The Arab American Museum is right over there. These are resources. These are our friends and neighbors. And if you can't find that in your heart, I don't know. I don't know. It is not the job of the oppressed to teach you compassion. Thank you.
Thank you for your sharing your experience with the Buddhist monk. And what I gleaned from the story early on was that he was deep in his practice. He was able to see the suffering of the guy that was inflicting and making him uncomfortable. And as we all chanted earlier, we cultivate the heart of enlightenment. It's cultivated in the heart, not through treaties, not through agreements, but it has to be seen through the heart. And the only way I see an authentic human being is when I take my small grandchildren to the playground. There's no fear, no resentment, no anger, no color, no nothing. They just there to be there with others. And I learned through my practice to cultivate that kind of enlightenment within my heart. My teacher told me, don't seek this intellectually, but learn to live it intuitively. Don't seek it in the mind, but live it through the heart. And that's why I find enlightenment as a human being. Thank you, my friend. Thank you for your share.
Just waiting, it's a hard one to contribute to.
Thank you for the talk. You said it so much more eloquently than I could have said it.
Come up here and then.
Mine came in. You said it so much more eloquently than I could have.
Hold it up to you.
I've had discussions with various friends and family members that for me, this is you said it better than I did. For me, there is no clean hands on either side in this current conflict. It is nothing new that has been going on for a long time. And yesterday I was listening to a podcast and I was introduced to a poem by Thich Nhat Hanh that the priest read, and I haven't gone back yet to look it up, but basically the title was Call Me by My True Names. And in there he said, I am the oppressed, I am the oppressor, I am the frog, I am the water snake that consumes the frog. And I think that, not only we need to look also at ourselves and what role is it that we play, not just in Palestine and Israel, not just in Ukraine and Russia, but right here in our own lives, in Ann Arbor or wherever we call home.
Yesterday, I was over at Dr. Lou's getting an acupuncture treatment. And the person who was giving it to me, the first thing she said to me is, Haju, I've been so disturbed for weeks about this situation. And she's usually really deeply present, I find. And so talk to me about it, I said. And she did. And we decided, because she got from a friend who she'd also talked with us about, the title of a book called The Lemon Tree. And she said, let's study the book together. And I said, yes, I'd like to do that. So that's one thing I'm investigating through getting into a little study with somebody else. Also, I'm really investigating my own mind, because that's the bottom line. Ultimately, my mind is just the same as yours. We're interconnected. So our mind, we need to work with it, each of us. So I can read and do all the stuff and watch innumerable things that come up on my feed. But in the end, what I've got, the most important part of my investigation, I think, is the investigation of my own mind. Is anybody else investigating?
Greetings to you all. It's wonderful to see everyone. I've been given the priceless gift of a big family with many members who are on the exact opposite ideological and political spectrum from me. And I think the greatest gift of practice has been that instead of me yelling at them about how wrong they are, because I know they are, but instead of that, I've learned to listen, and I've learned to be curious. And I find that the healing of those kind of divisions begins with a willingness to listen and a willingness to shut the hell up and not feel like what I have to say is so important. And I think again and again, so much conflict comes from nobody's listening to us, or we feel that way. And the situations right now are so heartbreaking. And I find myself really shutting out one particular side, but I know that the most valuable thing is to try to listen. And I think when we listen and when people feel heard, maybe that is the beginning of a way to move forward. So I'll add one thing.
We talked about being interbeing and interconnected, and I find with myself, it's a lot easier for me to feel interconnected with the stars and the clouds and the trees and the people I see coming in, all friends, than it is for me to feel interconnected with like the Hamas terrorists or the head of the Israeli military or Donald Trump, or we can just keep going and keep going and keep going. And so I feel like that's my practice challenge is who is this person who considers themselves, on the path? Who is this person? Is this person really seek to be interconnected and listening and maybe not agreeing, but seeing compassion for these folks? Or am I just going to create walls and divisions? And is that what I'm about as a human being? So I feel like lately that's been my practice, is looking at that.
So I, like many other people, I experience a lot of anxiety when it comes to many things, but I've noticed in particular that as I hear about things going on in the world, the conflicts, particularly this conflict, I have this sort of pull internally to turn away and to avoid. Even this conversation has been very uncomfortable, I'll be honest. And it's hard to keep an open mind and an open heart. And it's like your anxiety is kind of blind to you. You're like, I can't handle this. And I've experienced that for many years where I won't read the news, I won't learn, and it's too much. And I'm recognizing now that that's an untrue narrative. And that narrative being played in my mind and in the mind of millions of others is why so much terror is able to happen, because it's so easy to turn away. And so for me, my investigation is being able to meet my fear and discomfort with intention, and being able to recognize that pull to turn away, and to recognize that it's a lie, and to recognize that it's unhelpful, and to slowly kind of shape my comfort zone and expand it a bit. Not being so comfortable ignoring things that are important, because I'm very lucky to not be experiencing extreme suffering right now, but not a lot of people are that lucky. And I think because I am so lucky, I can use that as an opportunity to learn more. And sometimes I have this all or nothing mindset where, well, if I don't turn away, then does it mean that I have to be an activist? It doesn't mean I have to protest, but what does that mean? And I realized that the first step that it means is that I need to listen, and I need to have an open heart, because I cannot ignore what's happening in the world around me, because we are all interconnected. And I think this conversation was a nice start for me to feel more comfortable being uncomfortable.
Forgive me if my thoughts are all over the place on this. Immediately, so I'll start with the fact that I was raised Jewish, bar mitzvah, but the word Israel means he who wrestles with God, and I definitely identified with that as a young youth studying Judaism. Always was confused by various things that I learned, and one idea in particular that I never resonated with and still don't is the idea of a covenant. Forgive me for naming that, but the idea that God would separate one group of people from another and deem this group of people special never resonated with me, because I looked around the world and saw that we're clearly all one human family. That's not to say that there's not beautiful aspects of the tradition, and I love my Jewish family and friends, but that's one thing that I've always wrestled with to this day. I appreciate people naming the Nakba. It happened. Palestinians in Gaza have been living in an open-air prison And so we look at history and can find examples of the sorts of things we're seeing today. Of course, there's things that make it particularly difficult there, with Holocaust, and so it's so much wrapped up in it. But I think of people in Myanmar and Uyghurs, people who we aren't really talking about today. And the reason being that terrorism, and it's sad to say this, but it has proven effective in bringing this. The reason why we're talking about it today, and Hamas knew this, is the fact that they would just bring this into an international conversation. Their intention was to make it impossible to have. They did not want peace. They wanted, and so. And this has been a strategy that's, went back to the Munich Olympics and other, things like that. And, I'll say that in my own particular, I also think of my friend Shahar. We've worked on nonprofit projects together, assisting with this organization, Dream Towards Africa, an Israeli who'd been living as a digital nomad and was recently drafted to be a member of the artillery. I didn't know what to say to Shahar, but I just sent him a message just hoping for peace and wishing love to him. I'll say that as a finite being within a very complicated world, there's been a lot of confusion. And also, I have to trust that this is something that is not about me in some sense, that there's, what is, and I ask myself in my investigations, like, what is my dharma? And it's just practicing loving kindness to everybody who I come into contact with. That's the best that I can do.
Maybe one more person, and then we need to respect the time of the service. Anyone else? Yeah.
I've been learning lately about science of crowds. Like when there's a football game or something like that, how the movement of crowds happen. And it's interesting. The reason this conflict is a little different from other conflicts that are happening right now, like in Ukraine, is because it's not necessarily a conflict between government or government and the people. It's sadly a lot of it is hate and the general culture of both peoples. I just if you look at it, and it's caused because of the ideologies and religious beliefs and so on, and both sides. And I think the way to peace is seeing it clearly. What's the difference really? The fundamental difference between people? Are there really sides, or is it just just old human killing each other? I remember one is a beautiful Zen koan, Zen story that I read recently, where there was that Zen master living at the foot of a mountain in a hut, and he got stolen. A thief came to steal from the hut, but he found nothing to steal. So he was about to leave when he confronted the Zen master, and the Zen master took off his clothes and gave it to him. He said, well, you've come a long way, and you can't leave empty-handed. so take my clothes, and the thief took them and ran away. And then the Zen master sat down at the night and looked at the full moon and said, oh, what a poor man. I wish I could give him this moon.
Thanks everyone for the courage to speak out as you have, and also Baba for your starting this out with it. Next week, one of our also pioneering members, Kathleen Anzik, who has a son who's a rabbi in Israel, is coming, and we will continue our conversation and dialogue with Kathleen. She also has some friends who are peacemakers in Gaza, who she has been. So it'll be interesting to have someone who is so intertwined in the situation. So, what's next, Mom?
Appropriate vows.
And then what about announcements?
Announcements, yeah.
Let's do announcements first. Yeah. This is also.
Welcome everyone to the Ann Arbor Zen Buddhist Temple. My name is Osolgil. We just have a couple brief announcements. Firstly, our family service program has started back up for the academic year. Our next family service is going to be on November 12th at 10 a.m. So there won't be, a kind of normal service like this. It's going to be a little louder and more chaotic and a lot of fun. So if you have any children in your life who might be interested in learning a little bit more about Buddhism, feel free to bring them on November 12th. We'll also be having a one-day retreat on November 25th. That's 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. There's a sign-up sheet out in the lobby. Likewise, we'll be offering an introductory meditation course. The next overnight session is December 8th through 9th. You do get to sleep, and there is breakfast in the morning, but it's a really good way to learn to meditate if that's not something that you're very familiar with, or just to deepen your practice. We also offer yoga classes. Those are Tuesday evenings, 6:30 to 8 o'clock. You can sign up for a whole, several week session, or you can drop in. There's more information about all of these things that I've just spoken about out in the foyer.
Wasoko, could I ask Tong-san, who attends that class regularly, to give us 5 good reasons for thinking seriously about perhaps attending?
Let's see if I can count that high. Sounds like the mic is off. So I will project and support. And actually, this is one good reason to attend yoga is you learn how to breathe. And learning how to breathe means learning how to support your voice from the diaphragm, which is where we breathe from. So reason 1. Reason 2, many of us live in our heads. Yoga is about mind and body together, and about really paying respect to your body that has been supporting your head doing all its head shit all day. 3, the community is really sweet. There are a core of us who've been coming for years. We are kind to each other, but we also are very welcoming. In fact, we're not kind to each other. We're sick of each other. We need new people. That's 3. 4, the instructor, David Black, has been associated with this temple like Asvabhava for many, many years. He is deeply wise and a very, very good teacher. And 5, I can count this high because they're on my hand. 5 is the dog. There is a dog who's very, very, very cute and small and smells like vanilla and is not completely trained to sit still while we practice, but has his own little mat. And at the end, they release the Kraken and he runs around from person to person so that we can give him hugs and squishes.
Tong-san, is it a downward dog?
Classes start on the 31st, which is a terrifying prospect. I do hope you'll come.
Please consider.
Thank you, Tom-san. We also have a lot of study groups that are ongoing. Is Recovery Dharma?
Recovery Dharma will meet at noon in the historic temple, the yellow house next door. It's be in the library. Just go up the steps, remove your footwear, and you'll walk through the next set of doors and you're there.
Wonderful.
And also in Together Action, there'll be some work in the front garden. And Hayun needs some help with carrying some boxes of camp equipment to the new storage area.
Just 4 boxes, not as much as before. But I need 2 strong people to help.
Yeah. And so the garden folks, let's meet in the front yard. And if I'm not there yet, go and get some shovels for yourself in the tool shed and gloves.
So obviously the temple is supported by your kind donations of time and money. There were just a couple great ways to donate a little bit of time after service. There's also a fishbowl in the foyer for monetary donations. Did I miss anything?
You've done well.
All right, thank you.
Now the 4th grade vows. Yeah, compose yourself, Dharma friends. Together, just join in if it's new to you. All beings, one body.
All beings, one body.
I vow to liberate.
I vow to liberate.
Blind passions, one root.
Blind passions, one root.
I vow to terminate.
I vow to terminate.
Dharma gates, one mind.
Dharma gates, one mind.
I vow to penetrate.
I vow to penetrate.
The great way of Buddha.
The great way of Buddha.
I vow to realize.
I vow to realize.
This life is one great investigation.
This life is one great investigation.
Bodhi Swaha.
Bodhi Swaha.
That means may it be so. Okay, please stand. Let's do our 3 vows to formally finish. And just remember, everything counts. So becoming fully present and learning this full presence. Hands touching. Senses on the alert.
If you would assist us with putting away mats and cushions, the mats and cushions touching the carpet remain, and the rest are put in